I feel very prepared now. Like even so, we've had at games, and then we did Australia and Miami. I think we had like a 5K-ish run at all of them, and I'm not excited when I see one, but at this point, I feel prepared for it, which is you're able to compete a different way when you're prepared for the tests, and so I feel like that's also a factor in being able to place higher, and especially like this last one where it's only guys, like you're only competing against, I mean, the Wadapalooza teams were awesome, like so many great guys and so many phenomenal individuals. And that's the only time where, we get to compete against each other. Like obviously it's a competition, but it's also, we get to spend time with each other and enjoy it and chat about training and chat about life. And to have a 5K in there and place pretty well. I think we got 5th or something against all of the best guys in the world. Like they're all there. And that was the first time where I felt like I didn't get like lucky for the programming of a run where it's something I know I'm like competent at. I was just like, we'll see how we do. I feel like I'm prepared enough to hit this, to the best of my ability. Hopefully we get a good result. And if we don't, like, it'll be because of me, because Chandler and Noah are both really good runners. And then I can talk to my coach and be like, okay, how far off were we? Like, were we minutes off? Were we like a few seconds? And I would say we were a little off still, but like maybe we were like 15 seconds out of 3rd place in that event. And like, I'm okay with that for where we are in the season right now.
Yeah. Who is your coach now?
Joachim. He is the Krieger training coach out of Norway. I think he is actually Swedish, but he coaches all the Norwegians, worked with Kristen Holta. And
is he her partner or no?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay. I don't want to start any rumors.
No.
I've obviously have the wrong guy.
I don't believe so.
Business partner. Okay, and then so you've been with you were with Invictus for like a long time, initially, right?
Yeah, so I've been with like every group possible, which is, I think it's cool. I think maybe I don't like talk about it much, but I have a really, I think, great relationship with like pretty much every training group that I've been a part of. My first one was actually Misfit. It's like Misfit Athletics. Those guys are great. I did got to meet some really cool athletes. I met like Alec there and Cody. And then like a few years later, we ended up being teammates and like living all in Boston together and getting to train we trained out of Invictus Boston. I lived there for 5 years, and that was like where my competitive like CrossFit career kind of kick-started, I would say. Originally Reebok CrossFit Back Bay, but then we transitioned to partner with Invictus. And so Invictus, and then to Underdogs for a little bit. And the reason that happened is because I knew Justin.
Oh, you did that IF3 with him, was it?
I did IF3, and also the Grid League was like my that was my initial intro into fitness, functional fitness at 19. I was on the Boston Iron team. He coached the DC Brawler team. And so like, I'm from Maryland. So I kind of like, I wanted to be on that team, but I ended up being on the Boston team, and it was my favorite team I've ever been on. And it was like still one of the most fun times I've ever had. And that's why I moved to Boston, because those guys, I knew they had my back, and I coached for them for 5 years. I coached CrossFit and weightlifting, and just kind of started to get all the tools that I was going to need to be able to do this in a serious way.
When you started doing grid, were you attracted to that because you did gymnastics like when you were a kid, like when you were younger than
I had no idea what it was. I was like, I had just dropped out of college. I was 19. Like, I think it was like winter winter semester or something. So I was like maybe just in the new year, like 2016. And I had just got my L1 and I like just started coaching. And one of our members was like, hey, have you heard of this thing? It's called like Grid League. Basically he was like, you're not that fit, but I think you'd be good at this because like you're strong and you're good at gymnastics. And I did like, yeah,
backhanded.
this is like totally true, totally fair. But I did like some of the tests and like they invited, like you do like we did a pro day. And then if you do well there, you like go to the combine. And I did okay at both and like wasn't really sure, and then ended up like getting pulled for the Boston Iron team as like a reserve athlete, but like still on the team. And then one of our guys got injured and I figured out how to do butterfly muscle ups, and then I was a starter and it was cool.
Is that it? Was that like, maybe it's different because you were a reserve. Was that like lucrative? Was it like paid? Maybe not lucrative, but was it like better rewarded financially than say being a CrossFit athlete is?
Not for me. I think they blew their load really early. But like as a 19-year-old being paid to like do anything was pretty cool, especially when it's working out and like, oh, like someone's paying for me to like fly to California. How cool. So like to be making any kind of money just as as like a freshie was really special. And also it kind of laid the blueprint for how I've always thought teams should be run and talent should be scouted, and how to make the best teams possible for what you have. And we weren't always able to do it because we just didn't have the resources. But I think if you have the resources, like there's a way to do it that is beneficial for the athletes, beneficial for whoever, you know, the entity is that's going to run the team or own the team. And I think it can lead the team division into a really cool space. I have lots of thoughts about the team division, but I'm a firm believer that it can be way cooler than it is right now, and way more enticing, not only for like athletes, but also for people watching who like to watch CrossFit.
Is that so? I want to dive in there a bit. So the enticing, are you talking about programming? Are you talking about like making it more viewer friendly? Because who was it? I was talking to Joshua Shama, and he said at no point would his mum be able to just turn on games workout and know what was happening. And he was like, that's one of the stumbling blocks, that you can't just like flick it on and be like, look at the screen and say, okay, I get it. I know who's winning and what's happening.
I would agree, and I think that's something Grid did a great job of. There's like a clear, like there's 4 quadrants. You race from 1 to 4. Super simple every time. And everything about the race has changed, but it was always like start to finish. And like we kind of have start mats and finish mats, but there's always like, you got to go back and tag and this and that. And the programming is a little bit of it, which like, of course you want the test to be like well-rounded. So it's hard to have a well-rounded test with all of the events being viewer friendly. Like that's definitely a hard thing to do. People are not going to like this, but in my opinion, 40 teams is too many at this point with where the sport's at. If you look at the individuals, you have 40 and you have any individual in those 40 that can win any event, depending on the event. Whereas in the team division, I believe like last year, the top 3 teams won or got second in every event. So like there was just not a whole lot of there's not a whole lot of wiggle room, which is frustrating when you do really well and maybe have one that's not great. Obviously,
yeah, like you need favors from other teams, but there's just nobody of the caliber to come between you and someone else or whatever.
And I think we're getting there. I think there's going to be like 8 really good teams this year that I've heard about, and I'm excited to compete against. I think it makes it more fun as a competitor as well, because you know there's like something can always happen. Like, and I think that's how it should be. Like, you should know that every event matters. Like, there's not like, oh, we're just gonna walk away with this one, or like, we're not gonna win, but we'll like easily take a top 3. Like, there's just no one that can compete. And so I think 40 teams is too many. I think something like 20 teams would be much better, because then you get the best talent from those 40 teams and you just put it into 20 teams. That makes the race a lot closer, in my opinion.
So is it like, in order to make it, it needs to sort of move further away from the affiliate cup and closer towards the kind of super teams league, if you want to commercially make it viable, I guess?
Yeah, I would say it would need to go that way. So I've competed on...
The only ones who don't agree are teams 21-40. We need more teams.
And they did that. They went from a 6-person team to a 4-person team. Like, yeah. I was on the last tier of 6-person teams, so I got to experience that a little bit. And that made it more viewer-friendly and more competitive. And then there was a year, I think it was 2019, where they were doing the national champion thing still. So there was like hundreds of individuals. But the only way to qualify a team was to win a sanctional event.
Yeah.
And so there was a total of 13 teams at the games. And that year was wild. Like, super teams everywhere. During the sanctionals, when people were trying to qualify, like, Rogue had a team division that year, and like OC3 won Rogue, and then we got second, Mayhem got third. We had to like go to French Throwdown to compete against Mayhem again, a different Mayhem team, but also a super team to like try to qualify for the games. And then like getting to the games, every single team was like, it was that situation where depending on the workout, any one of the 13 teams could win. And that felt really cool. It felt more professional, in my opinion. Like,
would you have the teams with the individuals still in this like revamped format? Would you have like, say, the same scenario? Like I envisage, I don't know, but I envisage what's going to happen this year in Texas, because there was like 2 dates released early on and they kind of overlapped. And I thought, okay, but it's only teams and individuals that are going to be there. So I think they might do teams from, say, Tuesday to Thursday or Tuesday to Friday, and do individuals from like Thursday to Sunday. So like have a couple of days overlap, but the teams will have their own slot at the start. Individuals will have their own slot at the end. Kind of like the age groups and the individuals used to overlap in Madison or whatever. Do you think that's a good format, or would you rather have, all right, the team competition is going to be the first week in September or the first week in August, and the individual competition is going to be the last week in July, say?
I'm impartial to whether we go at the same time as the individuals or not. I think at this point, there's a lot of team athletes who were individuals at one point, or a lot of individuals who are like, maybe I'm going to transition to team. And I think it's maybe better for the community to have everyone there at the same time. But I think it's way easier to, I mean, if you cut the teams in half, that's like,
yeah,
what's 4 times 20? 80? 80.
It's less heats. It's less heats.
Less heats. You can have like 2 heats, and then maybe after 2 days of competition, you go top 10, and then you have 2 heats of 5, and then it's just like better coverage. You really know who's who, and there's not that kind of like, I don't like when you're watching the first heats at an event and they're getting like the announcers don't know who they are, like they're not maybe just like not doing very well. I like, if we're trying to professionalize the sport of CrossFit, we have to treat it professionally, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree as well. I kind of think that like semifinals is the place for that. Semifinals is the place for teams to, you know, like, hey, shit, we made it. This is cool. Like, let's see what kind of damage we can do or whatever. I don't think going to like flying to fucking America and competing, like, I just don't, you know, It's just, it kind of turns into also rans when you have teams where it's like, all right, let's try not finish last in this one. And it's like, no disrespect, still great that you made it there. But I just think that semi-finals is kind of the cutoff for that. Hey, let's give it a bash and see what happens attitude, as opposed to going to, well, now Texas and being